least for the holidays. Hunter, Pence, Daron, Sutton, thanks for hanging out with all of us. This is Perfect Game College Baseball. Hunter, you were a JUCO bandit, and you brag about it and remember fondly the experiences that you had. Marty Smith joins us, the College of Central Florida. He's a career guy at that level. He's meant to be at that level. He took them to the JUCO World Series last year. I'm really excited to chat with him.
Yeah, absolutely. JUCO baseball is just such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for young talent to really develop. It's going to be exciting to hear from him and his run. You know, it's been 20 years in the making for him going to Grand Junction, real young in his career. Now made it again. Going to be excited to hear that story and just see how things have changed in 20, 25 years. I think I always love diving into that stuff.
Yeah, the JUCO road trips, did you remember those? I mean, different than the private planes of the big leagues and the better food in the big leagues, there's still something special about a JUCO road trip, though, huh?
I mean, I am a huge fan of JUCO road trips. I'm sure he's got a story. There's no one who's been in JUCO baseball that doesn't have JUCO road trip stories. And it may seem tough when you're going through it, but when you look back on it as you get older, it's some of the best memories you'll ever have. That human element and that time together, and shenanigans start happening. I'm interested to dive in.
So when you and I first started, we started this show on Sirius XM Radio, and one of our first guests was Dan McDonnell, the head coach at Louisville. He's the kind of guy that when you get done interviewing him, this is just my opinion, you kind of want to get up and run through that brick wall that's behind me if it's really actually there. But he's so inspirational, such a leader, and he's fearless. He brings in guys from the Northeast all the time. McDonnell, head coach of Louisville, will join us on this show.
Yeah, I would argue one of the greatest leaders in our country, just elevated thinker, elevated coach. There's so much that you can take, and it's so fun to get to talk to him about baseball. They had a great run last year, making it to the Super Regional, and you can see why they've had back-to-back top 3 in the nation recruiting classes, because you do want to send your kid to play for him. You do want to run through a brick wall playing for Dan McDonnell. So I'm excited to get the opportunity to hear about last year's great run and a lot of those guys coming back. What's in store for the future for Louisville?
Yeah, it's Perfect Game College Baseball. Here we go. Really excited to get to know Marty Smith and the work he has done at the College of Central Florida. We know how deep they played last year. They went to the promised land and enjoyed their time and doing so at the JUCO World Series. Marty, thanks for hanging out with us. Happy holidays, and thanks for spending time with Hunter and I.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Same to you guys.
What was last year like as far as a building block? There are those moments. I've had a chance to broadcast a championship game a couple of times for Major League Baseball. There is no better event, in my opinion, than the JUCO World Series, and you guys had a chance to take part in it. From your eyes, your description as a coach, through the eyes of your players, what was that experience like?
Just special doesn't do it justice. We were there in 97, 98. It was 24 years since I've been there. So it's changed. Unbelievable. I think we played in front of 10,500 on the Monday night game. Just a special event. People don't recognize the work that goes into it for the people in the committees in the Grand Junction World Series crew. And makes it so worth it for the players. And believe me, I'm 57 years old, and I was a little kid for the whole time that we were there. And, just many, many dreams between 1998 when we went and 2022 when we went back, and finally woke up this time, and it was really happening. We really went, and it was all that I thought it would be and more.
Yeah, Marty, it never gets old hearing about it. And I think, as playing in JUCO, and I never made it to Grand Junction. We lost in the finals, but I think it's one of those special things. So hearing from you, making that trip that long apart, it never gets old. And I think all baseball people need to go and visit Grand Junction at some point. But I want to ask you, this brings me to one of my later questions, but you kind of set it up perfectly here. With that long of a gap from going to the World Series, what would you now tell your younger self, like whenever you were coaching back in those days? What have you learned in these years? How much has baseball changed, and what would one piece of advice be?
It's not easy just because you get to Grand Junction in your third and fourth season as a coach. Jeff Johnson and Chipola Junior College come along, and they start just whipping your butt for a while, but on the player development side, you got to be pretty strong. You got to be pretty big, and you got to get good players and develop them into better players. I think we've done that recently. It certainly helped us get back out to Grand Junction. tell my younger self, man, you got to get these guys in the weight room. You got to develop them when they're here. You got to get them better. Even though you recruit pretty good players, they got to leave great players. And it's really not hard work. It's smarter work. It's just being smarter with the resources that we have. And now that I know what I know, is it going to be easy to get back to Grand Junction from Florida? Absolutely not. But I tell my younger self that we need to work smarter. We need to get in the weight room and develop these guys and get them ready to get them out of the state of Florida and get on that big bird and fly to Grand Junction, which it's so difficult to do in Florida.
Wow, Marty, that's actually such an amazing answer. And being in junior college, it's like you don't get that big of a window to have these kids. It's a 2-year in and out, churning them over, and you have to develop quickly. And looking at your team last year, obviously the offensive numbers just jump off the page. You had some bangers. And you obviously developed them, but a lot of them are gone. It's kind of a new team. So this brings us to, like, how did this fall go, and like the development that you've learned over the years? How is that development taking over, and what does this young group look like, and what are you hoping to see them turn into before the season begins?
Well, the culture of last year's team will seep into this year's teams with the few guys that we have coming back. We have 2 guys with 10 or more home runs, I think, coming back that are really good hitters. And just the culture, the work, the weight room work that you have to put in, the amount of swings that we take, the hitting off of the tough pitching machines. It helps when you have some guys coming back that say, yeah, it's going to kick your butt in August and September hitting off of these machines. And you might have rounds where you don't get the ball out of the cage. But I promise you, we're going to have some fun in January and February when the season starts. And this is what we do. It's difficult. It's what we do, but it pays off at the end. I think we hit 96 home runs last year and sent guys to pro ball in Arkansas and Miami and Tennessee, which we didn't do there for a long period during our down years not down years, but just not getting to Grand Junction in those 24-year period. So the fall is going good. I think we got some pretty good players. We got to get them better. They have gotten better, measurably better, because we measure a lot of things. Everything's fine and we look great right now, but I'll tell you in April how things are going.
One of those players is John Morant, a player that had a dozen home runs for you guys last year. OPS was off the charts of right at 1,000. He found you from Georgia Tech. That's where he initially started at Georgia, and introduced him as an athlete, left-handed bat. Tell us more about John.
I'd say Joey Gallo light, but he's Joey Gallo, man. He's a legit 6'6", 225, incredible power. Battled a labrum last year. Did not play an inning of defense. DH for us. Tried to get it done early to see if he could play some D. Didn't work out. Had the surgery in June right after we got back from Grand Junction. It popped out on him a little bit in the state tournament and in Grand Junction. But boy, talk about a good number 2 hitter to come back. He's a big physical kid that's scary in the box and has literally a lot of Joey Gallo qualities. He's just a big left-handed dude that can swing it. He's got an idea how to hit, and he's really dangerous in the box. Power to all fields. And then we just got to get his arm healthy and get him in the corner outfield somewhere this year when the shoulder is ready to go.
It's interesting because I think of him and his journey from Georgia Tech, but I see a Florida player in Carl Hartman that found you guys, a pair of Stetson athletes that made their way, Floridians, Gill and Correa. So I love that actor comes from South Carolina. I love the story of the athlete that finds it a fit to come and play for you, maybe along their journey. Explain to me how that works from your end, how you communicate, how you leave the door open when you recruit an athlete out of high school, that they know they can come back and find you as an option.
Well, last year certainly helped us get some of these top level transfers that are 4.24 guys. Man, we've over the last 5 or 6 years, I've sent 6 pro coaches to professional baseball on the hitting side and on the pitching side. So we are gaining, I think, a well-deserved reputation of developing players and doing it the right way and getting them for pro ball, getting them ready for pro ball. We sent 7 into pro ball last year, either that were with us or went on from their 4-year school that were with us at one time. And hopefully we're getting that reputation of development and getting kids better when they get here. These are kids that are pretty hungry now. They were at Georgia Tech in South Carolina, in Stetson, in Florida, that maybe didn't get in, but they were dudes out of high school, and they come back here a little humble. You don't quite get the spoon-fed stuff that you got. We got peanut butter and jelly on a table in our locker room that we fight ants for sometimes. But it's part of what we do. And they get hungry, and then they see that maybe we do some things that they didn't do at those 4-year schools to get them better and have more time to do it. We don't have the 20-hour rule. We don't spend a lot more than that we have to, but we can in junior college, you can develop if you want to. We'll give you the resources to do it. You got to work. You got to pound some weights. We're not a get up early team. We sleep. We think sleep and food and lifting is important. So that rumor gets out there, that reputation gets out there, and they take the jump and say, all right, I'm going to go to this cushy D1 nice locker room with all this stuff to the College of Central Florida and Ocala, Florida. And we're 30 minutes south of Gainesville, about an hour north of Orlando. We're not in the middle of nowhere. It's a neat little place. I've raised my family here, and right on I-75, easy for a pro scout to get here on their way to the University of Florida, 30 miles up the road. So they get scouted here. Our scout day has usually 25 plus major league teams represented. And it's well worth their time because recently we've gotten some players and we've made them better at the end of the year, including Nate Pearson, who wasn't a draft pick when he got here and was a first rounder when he left 8 or 9 months later. So that reputation helps us get those dudes from the Division I schools that, they're just unhappy and hopefully they're hungry and get here and have a little bite of that humbleness and get ready to work and get after it. And then it's a feather in our cap if we can get them back to another good school.
Yeah, Marty. There's so many things I want to ask you about because you've hit on the weight room a couple times. You've hit on development a couple times. But I have to, just because you're on the JUCO humbleness and the grindiness. And I am a huge fan of what JUCO taught me. No doubt it definitely stayed with me my entire career. I love that we could practice more than 20 hours. It was a lot more like a professional atmosphere where it was like, obviously you have your schooling, but a lot more time playing baseball. But I got to get a JUCO. You've been doing this a long time, and this is one of my favorite things in all of JUCO was the JUCO travel, the time in the vans. You got to have one in the back pocket JUCO travel story, at least one.
There's so many I can't think of.
Yeah. Take your time. We can edit this, but some one of those good JUCO stories.
Okay. We're coming back. We just got our butts kicked in Brevard, over in Brevard. We're on our way home. Usually we stop and eat. It was a Saturday doubleheader. We got whooped twice. It's about a 2.5 hour ride back. And my player's parent asked him, hey, are you guys going to stop? They had gone to the game from Tampa. This kid ended up playing Florida State. Great kid, great family. He accidentally sent to me in a text, not the group message, to me. He thought he was texting his parents. And he said, it's not even going to let us stop and eat. And it was supposed to be to his parents, but I got it. I was in the front. He was in the back. I got it maybe 10, 15 minutes into the trip. I just let him bake in the back, and I promise you, I was sitting there. I showed it to my assistants. It made its way up to the front of the bus. Oh crap! Casey accidentally texted Marty that and he said this, and they're showing it everybody. And I said the worst thing. I mean, the way I can let him bake is just let him bake till we get back. And I wasn't going to do anything to him. I wasn't, because we didn't stop. Just got back and. So he comes up to the office, didn't say a word. Everybody's pretty quiet when we get off the bus. He comes up to my office after. He said, hey, coach, I'm really sorry about that. I meant that for my parents, and I'm really sorry. I know you just didn't want to eat. The fact of the matter was I had something to do when we were getting back. My wife wanted me, if we were going to get back quick, hey, let's try to do this. It wasn't any real punishment or anything like that. And I go, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all. He's like, what, really? And I was like, yeah, don't worry about it, man. It happens. I've done that. We've all texted the wrong person here or there. And it was just one of those things where I said the worst punishment is him just baking back there for 2 hours and go, oh, no, what's he going to do when I get back? And then when I get back, just go, oh, man, don't worry about it. We had a reunion about five years later. His parents were there. We talked about it. We laughed about it. He and his parents and I laughed about it about 2 days later, I think. And he's like, oh my God, he's such an idiot. And that was just one of those just one of those that happens. We've had all kinds. Guy with his guitar on the bus singing original material back in the early 90s. He was a pro umpire for a while. Just tons of them. And they're great. It's what JUCO's about. And we hear guys, the 424 guys that come back to us at the end of the year that are at 4-year schools right now that came back last Saturday for our ring ceremony and said, man, I miss it so much here. JUCO's just, people don't understand what JUCO is. And I said, no, you're right. They really don't. Unless you've played there, you really don't. The bond, the dirtiness of it. They're called JUCO bandits for a reason. And we got good students. JUCO's now, man, we got a team 3.2 GPA and 20 guys are better with a 3.0. And it's different, but there's just that grime to it that makes you hungry and gets you a little bit better and gets you ready for the next level.
You know, Marty, like, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. And obviously I haven't done it in the new era where there's like cell phones and internet everywhere, but the human element of being on a van through those tough times. And I can imagine that was a life lesson for that kid. Like, hey, be careful what you say anywhere in a text message. You know, because like I was actually thinking before you started the story, I never want to be on the coach's van back after losing a couple of games. That's miserable. But I remember it would be like freezing cold in the winter or whatever, and we would all try to take our shirts off and roll all the windows down and be like, who's going to put on their shirt first? Like freezing out and just singing. And like that human element and that time together, not on phones, is like second to none. And I really think those relationships and those memories are just the absolute best. And why I think JUCO is one of the best roads, you know, if you get an opportunity in the baseball journey. So thanks for sharing that story. And I got one more for you, Marty. You got me all fired up, bringing back the good memories. I want to ask, now I'm going to dive in a little bit back, bring it back to baseball, but efficiency. This is a word that I love. Like, and I think, you know, because you can work hard and you only have so much time, no matter what. It's 24 hours a day. How have you learned to be more efficient? You know, having all these coaches that have moved on, you've seen so many different ideas throughout your time. How did you get more efficient?
We cut out those rundown bunt D, tandem relays, stuff that you work on way too much for a long time. They're great team things. You got to do them. We still do them. We don't do them as much. I used to do them 2 to 3 times a week, spend 20 to 30 minutes in our practice schedule. And then they happen. And then we'd go look back and say, we had one rundown and we screwed it up and we worked on it 3 times a week, and a first and third play and a bunt D and special bunt Ds and tandem relays and all this stuff. And yes, they're all important. Yes, we work on it. We've cut back on those a lot. And that's where our player development comes in. It's a lot more about the player. It's a lot more about taking more swings, throwing concentrated bullpens, lifting weights, taking a lot of ground balls, things that happen in the game we're going to do. You'll look back and you go, we had one first and third play all year last year. We had one bunt defense where we had to run. We had literally 2 rundowns and we screwed one of those up and we work on it all the time. So we cut out a lot of that to be more efficient in lifting weights, getting extra swings. Man, it takes a long time to set up machines. We don't have managers setting up a big hack attack, a little hack attack, a curveball in the cage, another one in the cage. We don't have managers do that. That takes time. That time has to come from somewhere. I have it on my Twitter at the top. The pinned tweet takes you through about 13 things on where we made the shift, what we did to to make that happen. In other words, what we had to cut out and what we made more important. And you're going to have the guys that go, oh yeah, you're going to screw up that bunt to lose the state tournament. We might, but we're going to be in the state tournament because we can mash and we make plays and ground balls, and our pitchers can throw, and we've developed breaking balls. And so you got to take one for the other. So efficiency, if it happens and we've become more efficient, it's because we've cut out some things that we've de-emphasized. And honestly, we haven't screwed up any more than we did when we worked on them 2 or 3 times a week. And you just lose the players during that time too. When we're setting up the machine and practice is dragging for 8 to 10 minutes while we're dragging out cords and setting up 2 pitching machines, that's better than doing rundowns or first and third Ds or whatever it is we got to do.
Well, great question, great answer. I want to ask you about your son Ryan. He played at your program and had, as a baseball leader in the Twins organization. Brag on him just a little bit, where his journey has taken him now.
I'm so proud of him. He played for me, played at Division II Valdosta State, and just dove into the data analytics side and the hitting side, where it will come down to back to the middle, which he knows that. Has been a minor league coach, hitting coach for the Twins for the last 4 or 5 years. He's been in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in A-ball. Pensacola during the COVID year, they didn't have a season. Double A, Wichita, brand new stadium there, really nice hitting facility. Triple A St. Paul last year, became the assistant coordinator for the Twins at the beginning of November. So assistant coordinator there, and 2 weeks later, the Blue Jays called him last week. And they went through some dancing, and they offered it to him. And the Twins said, we will match or exceed whatever they give you. And they did. They stepped up. Ryan's a loyal guy. The Twins have been really good to him. So Ryan's staying with the Twins as an assistant coordinator with a nice little bump. Thank you, Blue Jays. And he's 3 hours down the road from me. Another guy I'm really proud of, Zach Bove, who played for me. Zach, just the opposite. He was with the Twins, assistant pitching coordinator. He was just named the big league assistant pitching coach for the Royals. So he's in the big league. So just unbelievable guy. The person that started us in this player development role that we're on back around 2016 or 17 when we had Nate Pearson and Zach Bove dove into this and convinced me this. And if there's one thing I'll take credit for, I'm just smart enough to listen to really, really good assistant coaches and have an open mind to their new ideas and not be an old school dummy like I was for many, many years and got nowhere, spun our wheels and didn't develop players and didn't win. We were over 500 and we were okay, but didn't do what we're doing now.
Best story, by the way. I mean, they call it the hot stove because of stories like yours. You warmed our fire with that story that you shared for Hunter's Story Time. We appreciate it. Happy holidays to you and your family. Congrats with your son and his journey with the Minnesota Twins. And we'll see you back at, hopefully, as you said, it's tough to get out of Florida, but at that JUCO World Series again next year.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot. Maybe we'll see you in Nashville at the convention if you're there.
We would love that. We will have you stop by. Please stop by and see us. When we come back, Coach Dan McDonnell of Louisville, Hunter and I thank you for hanging out with us on Perfect Game College Baseball. From the JUCO ranks to Louisville, and a man who's certainly not afraid to recruit a talented JUCO player if he's a fit for Louisville, Dan McDonnell joins us now. Happy holidays, Coach. We appreciate you spending time with Hunter and I, and we hope everything's well.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you guys as well.
So the fall, obviously you have some guys healthy, and I know Hunter and I want to ask about some of your guys you've brought back from last year that are healthy. You get through seeing what your players have learned this summer on their journeys. What were some of the high points for you this fall as you've now wrapped it and you get ready to take a brief break before the 2023 season? What were the high points for you this fall?
I think, and you got to be careful, right? The fall is it gives you a barometer, but by no means, every year there's guys that really struggle in the fall and they make some adjustments and they have monster springs. And then unfortunately you have the other way, right? Guys that seem to have too much success and it comes a little easy in the fall. And then in the spring, they can't get it going. So for myself and Coach Williams, Coach Snyder, I mean, you got guys been doing this for 30 plus years. It's like, guys, don't get too comfortable. Let's not get too high. Let's not get too low. For me, the highlight of the fall was probably depth with our position players and maybe depth with our pitching staff. Now, the negative there is you don't know your weekend rotation. The positive is, man, you sure feel like you got 4 or 5, 6 candidates dueling it out. And so we like the depth we have on the mound. And position player wise, we haven't dipped into the transfer portal, but we do like to bring in a couple junior college guys every year. And a couple junior college position players mixed in with an older group of hitters and a couple freshmen. We like our depth and our options.
I mean, yeah, Dan, it's going over your roster. It's a little tricky because the roster isn't put up yet, but you can find some of the information. And back-to-back top 3 recruiting classes. Obviously, you're looking at last year's recruiting class this fall, and there's got to be a lot of exciting talent, but also a lot of returning successful guys from last season. Talk a little bit about that balance of young, talented recruiting class with, Jack Payton, Christian Knapzik, Isaac Humphrey also coming back. How does that play itself out in the fall, and how does that blend for you this season so far?
Our success has been pretty consistent. Recruit, good baseball players, athletic kids, tough-minded kids, and then take pride in development. And so once you get it rolling, it seems like every year you have a nice mix of older players. You have to have some really good juniors and seniors. And you said it, there's a group of juniors there that have been in the mix the past few years. Knapzik, Payton, Humphrey, Beard, Benson. You combine that with a group of, you said whatever they're ranked, a talented young group, and there's that freshman, sophomore mix of guys that just step in. And as always, we're going to have a couple freshmen that have to play, but we're going to have depth and balance throughout the lineup. So, last year, the lineup didn't get a lot of love going into the preseason, and they broke the school record for home runs. That's including, before the bats changed. So I think we hit like 95 home runs last year. And so, Coach Schneider, Coach Rabel just do a great job with the hitters. And I love the balance we have where we want to do a little bit of everything. Obviously everybody wants to hit home runs, but we probably preach more doubles, gap to gap. We take a lot of pride in our base running. I think we had 100 stolen bases again last year, the 8th time in 9 years. So, for us, it's just about balance up and down the lineup. Combine that with some depth, just gives us good options.
Absolutely. You're dripping with talent, that's for sure. You have, obviously the run last year. There's a lot of things I want to hit on, but you just mentioned your hitting staff, and I'm just and you saying that you didn't have expectations for offense, and just looking at the OPSs last year, I know you're missing, Dalton and Metzinger, but we're looking at 950 OPS plus 1150 OPS from Dalton, and just the offense absolutely crushed it. So I have to dive into a little bit of that philosophy. What are some of the training tools to develop this hitting, and what do you think these guys did to help lead to that crazy success on like a grand scale? Because everyone is just banging for you last year.
Well, it goes back to, you mentioned it. I don't ever want to take anything away from the talent. We recruit at a high level, so we get some really talented kids, but they're also, I call them athletic. I call them tough-minded, and you have to be willing to grow. And we talk a lot about growth mindset. And then at the end of the day, you have to trust us, right? So, what Coach Snyder and Coach Vrabel have done now for the last 9 years is they really teach the fundamentals of hitting. And we just go back to the basics. Let's see what we got in the fall. Let's make some minor adjustments. And I love what we do. As soon as the Pizza Bowl, which is our World Series, fall World Series ends in the middle of October, we call in every hitter individually. We call it the round table. So myself and Coach Vrabel and Coach Snyder, we sit there with every hitter individually, a meeting, and we go over, strengths, weaknesses, and what we have to attack. And again, it's about, as you know, Hunter, you have to be willing to make adjustments. You have to be willing to grow. And then in simple, I just think Coach Snyder and Coach Vrabel, it's the fundamentals of hitting. It's just really old school, blue collar, how to hit, how to step in the batter's box and compete. Add some technology and new information that we can use that kids can relate to, and it helps. But we do Dari testing the whole body. We do eye testing, put all of our kids. So there's a lot of little things we do. I say little, but we don't overemphasize numbers and gadgets and technology as opposed to, hey, can you teach kids how to hit, connect with them, and get them to buy in and just make some subtle small adjustments. Like I said, as you know, Hunter, turn out to be huge numbers, from a success standpoint.
As signing day has come and gone, Coach, and I look at the class of 23, Hunter and I got a chance to see some of them at the All-American Classic. Hunter called the game with us on ESPN. And, I come back to the same question, and, maybe it's a refreshed answer, but I look at Colton Hartman, Ohio. I look at Zion Rose, Illinois, Detmers, Illinois, Dean, Indiana, Baker, Maryland. You know where I'm going with this. When you go on down, Kyle Crowe's from Michigan, Lucas Moore's from Ohio. There is a fearlessness in this program, your program, and you talk about tough-minded athletes, to kind of throw the geographic, part of the country out the window. The best players that fit your program, not what we may stereotype. Plus, the indoor game has grown so much. The summer game has grown so much. But I love this class of 23 because it all kind of represents, quote unquote, flyover states, blue collar states, or the Northeast. Here we go again, Louisville building.
Well, it goes back to, I think, baseball. We have to understand, and Skip Bertman, said this 30 years ago, that you have to recruit your region. You're only as good as your region, So as you mentioned, top baseball programs, you take a 5-hour radius and you have to live, one, for in-state tuition, just because of the limitations in scholarship, but also 4 or 5 games a week, families wanting to be involved. Your geographic region is going to play a huge part in it. So fortunately in Louisville, Kentucky, we can take that 5-hour radius. 6 hours will get us to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Obviously, we hit Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Chicago. We get into Wisconsin, and we're starting to get over even more into St. Louis and Kansas, going a little further west. We've always hit Iowa. And if you can drive to campus, then you're going to come to the South. It's not the deep South. It's not Miami. It's not 75 and sunny. But I tell our kids, hey, it's better than where you're at, right? So come south and play in this part of the country. And then, yes, our philosophy just goes, I don't want to act like kids from Florida or Texas or California aren't tough. There's obviously tough kids all over the country. But we do take pride in that Midwest blue-collar toughness. And as you reeled off where all those kids are from, that credit goes to their families. That credit goes to the communities. And so they kind of have a good foundation when they get here as to roll up your sleeves, let's work hard. And we've dealt with weather and some elements, I think, that have created toughness. But our theme this year is toughness. And I have the Jay Billis book. I just gave one to every player on our team as they break for the Christmas holiday. We cover that book in the fall. We cover it in the spring. But I even give them a hard copy because we just believe toughness is such a key ingredient as a separator. When there's that fine line between winning and losing, we want to make sure we're mentally and physically as tough as we can be to compete, especially in the postseason.
It's such a simple-minded response I have to your answer, but the dad in me just kicked in, and I was going to ask you about Ryan McCoy. We'll get to him in a bit. But the dad in me kicks in and thinks, okay, now when you talk like that, you're not just preparing men for professional baseball, you're preparing men for life, Coach. And that's got to be something that really matters to you. When you answer like that, the dad in me thinks, if I had sons, I have daughters, but that's what I'd want my son to prepare for. Maybe not pro ball, maybe for life.
Well, I went to a military college, so you go to a military college with a mindset of, hey, I'm doing more than just getting a degree and playing Division I baseball was awesome. I mean, you choose a school like that because of that factor of, I want to be ready for, as we call it, the real world. And the longer we coach, right? And I talk about Coach Williams and Coach Snyder and myself doing this for over 30 years, and you see the gray, in my beard. We're parents, and we have 11 kids on our coaching staff. We currently have 6 in college. So as I relate to parents nowadays, it was like, hey, 10 years ago, I wanted to win something fierce, but my kids were, 9 and 12 or 10 and 13. Now that they're 20 and 23, man, I'm living what you parents are living. And so I probably have more compassion, more understanding. I probably connect better with parents these days because I know when your child gets a parking ticket or he doesn't use his meal card, as parents, what we go through. But my desire to win hasn't gotten any less. So I think, as you mentioned, Dad, it's our ability to connect with moms and dads because we're currently living it right now.
Beautifully said, Dan. And I love just the fact of, obviously the toughness that you're going to instill within the kids, today here at Louisville, preparing them for life, but also professional baseball is real life. And you're going to need toughness if you want to succeed in the baseball world, the real world. And these are things that carry on to success in all fields. But I wanted to dive into a little bit of the toughness you had last season and that regional run to lose game 2 and to come back and to win that regional, to have to, win a game to get back to play Michigan and then to take them down 2 in a row. Can you describe a little bit of that team, that story, and what you learned going through it?
Well, first, Hunter, as you mentioned pro ball, and I steal this from Coach Williams, our pitching coach, one of our goals is to get guys ready to move through a system. And so as they leave our program and they get into the challenging world of pro baseball, as you know, it's not about getting to a level and staying there. It's about moving. And that's going to take some real toughness to move through a system. And that's why we preach it so much in this system, in this organization that we have. When I look at last year's club, and I'm excited to see what they do in pro ball, because I think guys like Rushing and Metzinger and Poland and Prosecki and those guys, I think they're gonna move through some systems because of that toughness. But we go over it every year. If the stars have to line up for you to have success, you're probably not a real consistent, successful person. And so when we lost game 2, we kind of went back to, hey, guys, in 19, we lost game 2 with Detmers and Miller and Bennett and that crew. And we ended up winning that regional, winning the super regionals and going to Omaha. And so, that's why it's double elimination. We didn't panic. We showed some great resolve, and we fought through the 18 innings on Sunday. And then, we're losing that Monday, if necessary, game, I think, going into the 8th inning. We're actually losing. And something we addressed last year with the team, from the year before, we weren't a great last 3-inning team. So something I do, and now it's kind of become a consistent thing, during the practice, middle, second half, last part of practice, we call the guys up, stop the music, everybody comes to the mound, and I'll throw out a statistic or a challenge, or here's the last 9 outs of a game, or 2 years ago we were 1-9 when losing past this inning. I'm going to pull everybody up and I'm going to say, hey, guys, if we're going to win the last 9, 6, 3 outs, whatever it is, extra innings, we have to be great in this last phase of practice. And then everybody scatters, the music comes back on, whatever we're at. And I think just addressing that all last fall, all spring, when we were down in the 8th inning, in the if necessary game to to go to a super regional, I called everybody up in the dugout. I just reminded them of our preparation, and it was fun to see a 2-out rally in the 8th, and we close it out in the 9th, and we advance, to a super regional. So, it's just part of, as coaches, our job is to prepare kids. And I felt like at that point, I felt comfortable and confident that our kids were prepared to handle that type of adversity.
Dan, I think that's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing, because for me, and I'm a big student of the mental side of baseball, and just to have you going through the whole season, like, hey, I know if we want to do what we want to accomplish, like, we have to focus on this, because it's easy to get deflated when you fall behind, right? And calling them out, planting the seed, and then it coming to fruition. Dan, that's absolutely remarkable, and it gives me chills. I got chills, so thanks for sharing that story. I'm also interested, I would like to dive in, but I got to move to a different topic here about how do you teach a kid to move through a system? Because that's a funny, actually, let's get that answer. Like, if you are training these kids, to move through a system in professional ball and to be mentally tough, what is kind of that edge there, or that advice that you would give?
I think, one, it's about competing. And so fortunately we're in a program, we don't have a minor league system, right? We have a roster limit, but we do put together a 35-man high competitive group. And as I mentioned it in our last team meeting the other day, we do a thing called As You See It. And I let the players pick the starting lineup, and we tally up all the votes, and we post it and say, hey, guys, if we were playing on October 20th, this is what the starting lineup looks like according to your peers. And they got a pretty good idea. They're usually probably 90, 95% right. But then I remind them, the lineup's not what it is October 20th, right? It's really what is it going to be February 16th, 17th, 18th. And then what's it going to be March 17th, 18th, April 17th, 18th. So the point I'm getting at is you got to earn it, and then you got to earn it every day. We use the phrase a lot, you got to be professional. So, and we use stories of our current players, stories of Adam Duvall in the big leagues, 30 and 100. He's an all-star. He's in the home run derby. And then he gets traded. And then he's sent down to AAA. And then he's got to fight his way back up. And so you're constantly using these stories as to, guys, I know you want it easy and you want it given to you, but I don't care. Yes, they might give you a lot of money and they might give you a lot of opportunities, but at the end of the day, you got to earn it, man. You got to earn it between the lines. And so we just create that mindset here. You don't arrive. Don't get too comfortable. You got to earn that job every single day. And so they're fighting for 2, 3, 4 years while they're here. And so when they cross line into pro ball, it's like, man, I've been fighting for the last 3 or 4 years. So if I'm going to advance in this system, I better be committed to competing and fighting every day. And that to me is the biggest thing in our program as to preparing them to, as we like to say, move through a system.
Dan, thanks for your insights. Happy holidays, as we said when we started this. Many blessings to you and your family and your program. Have an incredible 2023.
Amen. You too, guys. Merry Christmas.
Dan McDonnell, the head coach at Louisville. We also want to thank Marty Smith, who joined us, the legendary head coach of the College of Central Florida. That was a rich show. Hunter and I look forward to seeing you again next week right here on Perfect Game College Baseball.